February 14th, 1933. Bumpy Johnson was outnumbered 12-1. Dutch Schultz had sent his deadliest crew, Tommy the Executioner, Vento, Marty Icepick Delaney, and a roster of killers so unknown even the police didn't have their names. They cornered Bumpy in the basement of the Cotton Club. No witnesses, no clean escape, one narrow staircase leading out. Bumpy was only 27, still learning the game. Dutch was one of the most powerful mobsters in New York. Everyone expected the same ending: Bumpy Johnson dead in a basement. But Dutch didn't understand one thing. Bumpy Johnson didn't play by anyone's rules. 90 minutes later, only one of those 12 men walked out alive. And he delivered a message that made Dutch Schultz, the man rumored to have killed more than 40 people, turn pale. This is the night Bumpy Johnson became untouchable. To understand what happened, you have to understand Harlem in 1933. The Harlem Renaissance glow had faded. The Great Depression had hit hard. People were desperate, and when people are desperate, they gamble. The numbers racket, an illegal lottery, was the lifeblood of Harlem. You could bet a nickel and win $50. If you only made $7 a week, that nickel wasn't just a bet. It was hope. And in Harlem, hope was currency. Dutch Schultz saw that currency and wanted all of it. He was a German-Jewish mobster from the Bronx who'd made millions bootlegging during Prohibition. But Prohibition was ending, and Dutch needed a new empire. So he looked south, saw the money flowing through Harlem's numbers game, and decided Harlem was next. There was just one problem. Harlem already had royalty. Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the Queen of Numbers, and her enforcer, a young man named Bumpy Johnson. And Bumpy wasn't like other muscle. He wasn't just a trigger man, he was sharp. He'd educated himself in prison, reading Shakespeare, philosophy, anything he could get his hands on. He understood something most men never learned. In Harlem, respect wasn't bought with fear. It was earned with loyalty. When St. Clair's runners got robbed, Bumpy got the money back. When dirty cops tried to shake down black businesses, Bumpy made them disappear, sometimes violently, but just as often through ruined careers, shattered reputations, and quiet pressure that left people too scared to try again. He was strategic, calm, unmoving, and he refused to bow to Dutch Schultz. January 1933. Dutch sent emissaries into Harlem. They sat down with Madame St. Clair at her club on 133rd Street. Their message was simple: work with Dutch, pay tribute, or get buried. Madame St. Clair, an immigrant who'd built her empire from nothing, looked at these white men sitting in her club and said flatly, "Get out." The emissaries turned to Bumpy, standing in the corner. "You want to be smart about this, boy?" Bumpy didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared. The kind of stare that makes a man suddenly remember he has a family and life insurance. They left and reported back to Dutch, and Dutch Schultz, who'd never been told no, certainly not by a black woman and her young enforcer, made a decision. Burn it all down, starting with Bumpy. He didn't just want Bumpy dead. He wanted it to be a message, public, brutal, the kind of death that makes everyone else fall in line. February 14th, 1933. Valentine's Day. Ironic, considering what was about to happen. Bumpy got a tip. Dutch's men were planning to hit Madame St. Clair's main counting house on Lenox Avenue at dawn. So Bumpy went to check it out, alone. That was his first mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe Bumpy knew exactly what he was walking into: the Cotton Club basement. Not the famous downtown club for white audiences. This was the real after-hours spot, where Harlem's players came to drink, gamble, and settle scores. Downstairs was storage, crates of liquor, poker tables, shadowy corners, and a single exit through a narrow staircase, a perfect trap. 4:32 a.m. Bumpy descended the stairs. The basement was dark except for one bare bulb swinging from the ceiling. And then he heard it. Safeties clicking off. 12 guns. 12 men stepping out of the shadows. Tommy, the executioner, smiled like he was already celebrating. Dutch sends his regards. Bumpy stood still, hands at his sides, face calm, slowly scanning the room, counting them, one by one. 12. Then he looked back at Tommy. That all he sent? Tommy's smile faltered, because with Bumpy Johnson, that wasn't bravado. It wasn't posturing, it was math. You got about 5 seconds to beg, Tommy said, raising his gun. Bumpy tilted his head slightly, like he was disappointed. You're making a mistake, Tommy scoffed. What mistake? You're about to be dead. Bumpy's voice stayed quiet, controlled. The mistake is thinking I came here alone. For a beat, the guns stayed trained on him, but the men hesitated. Doubt crept in. Tommy flicked his eyes toward the stairs. Nothing. He looked back at Bumpy. You're bluffing. Bumpy's mouth curled into the first hint of a smile. Then shoot. Nobody fired. Because what Dutch Schultz's men didn't know was this. Bumpy Johnson had been fighting since he was 10 years old, back in Charleston, South Carolina, before Harlem, before the numbers game, before he ever became a name people whispered. Street fights, prison riots, territory wars. He'd learned something most men never learn. Violence has a rhythm. And in that basement, Bumpy controlled the rhythm. Tommy's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance, Bumpy moved. What happened next was described differently by everyone who tried to explain it. The one survivor's testimony was confused, fragmented, like his mind couldn't replay what his body had lived through. But here's what we know. Bumpy didn't reach for a gun. He reached for the light. One punch. The hanging bulb shattered. Darkness, complete. Then chaos. Shots erupted, wild, panicked, men firing at shadows, at footsteps, at fear itself. Tommy shouted, "Hold your fire! Hold your fire!" But fear doesn't listen to orders. In that darkness, Bumpy became something else. He knew the room. He'd played poker there 100 times. He knew every crate, every table, every corner. Dutch's men didn't. One by one, they went down. Not from clean gunshots. Bumpy didn't waste bullets. He used his hands. He used confusion. He used their panic, because in the dark, they started hitting each other. A scream, a body thudding to the floor, another gunshot, another scream. Tommy tried to rally them. The stairs! Get to the stairs! But Bumpy was already there. The violence lasted maybe 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. And then, silence. When someone upstairs finally opened the basement door and light spilled down the steps, this is what they found. 11 bodies. Not all dead, but every one of them broken. Shattered bones, gunshot wounds from friendly fire, unconscious, bleeding. And one man, slumped against the wall, hyperventilating, still clutching a gun in a shaking hand. Marty Icepick Delaney, the only one still conscious. Bumpy was gone. Vanished like smoke. Marty crawled up the stairs. It took him 20 minutes. Every step was agony, broken ribs, maybe worse. By the time he reached the street, the sun was coming up. He flagged down a cab with blood-soaked money. Bronx, he gasped. Arthur Avenue. Dutch Schultz's headquarters. 8:17 a.m. Marty stumbled into Dutch's social club. Dutch was having breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, reading the newspaper like it was any other day. He looked up and froze. Marty was drenched in blood. Dutch's voice dropped. Where are the others? Marty couldn't answer at first. He just shook his head. Dutch stood slowly. Where are my men? Marty finally managed a whisper. Dead. All of them. Dutch's face tightened. What? Marty swallowed, fighting to breathe. He let me live. Dutch's eyes narrowed. Why? To give you a message. The room went still. Lieutenants, accountants, bodyguards. No one moved. Dutch's voice turned to ice. What message? Marty reached into his jacket. Several of Dutch's men reached for their guns until Marty pulled out a single playing card. An ace of spades. smeared with blood. He placed it on the table in front of Dutch. Marty's voice was barely there, but the words landed like a gunshot. He said to tell you, Harlem's not for sale, and if you send more men, send more cards. Marty stared at Dutch. He's collecting a deck. Dutch Schultz stared at the card for a long time. His men waited, ready for the order, ready for Dutch to unleash hell and send 50 men to burn Harlem to the ground. Instead, Dutch picked up the card, studied it, and smiled. Not a happy smile, a resigned one. He's got balls, Dutch murmured. I'll give him that. Boss, one of his men started, we can't let this... Dutch held up his hand. You know what it costs to go to war with someone who isn't afraid to die? He said quietly. Someone smarter than you? Someone with an entire neighborhood behind him? He shook his head. It costs everything. He glanced at the card again. And for what? Numbers money? There's easier money. Dutch dropped the ace of spades into the ashtray, struck a match, and lit it. We're done in Harlem, he said. Let Bumpy Johnson have it. The room was stunned. Dutch Schultz, who'd gone to war with Lucky Luciano, who'd killed partners, who never backed down, was backing down. Why? Because Bumpy had done something even Dutch respected. He proved he was willing to die for his principles. And men like that, you don't fight them. You either kill them or you leave them alone. And Dutch couldn't kill him. Years later, in the 1970s, a reporter tracked down an old Cotton Club employee and asked what really happened that night. The old man just smiled. You want the truth? Bumpy wasn't alone. The reporter blinked. What? He had 4 guys upstairs the whole time, the old man said. They locked the basement door from the outside once Dutch's men went down, trapped them in. He leaned in, voice low. Bumpy could have killed all 12 if he wanted, but he let one live on purpose, because Bumpy understood something. Killing Dutch's men starts a war. He paused. Humiliating them ends it. Whether that's truth or legend, nobody knows for sure. But we do know this. After that night, Dutch Schultz never sent another man into Harlem. Bumpy Johnson became the undisputed king of Harlem's underworld, and for the next 35 years, he protected that neighborhood like it was family, not with reckless violence, with strategy, intelligence, and a code. And that ace of spades? They say Bumpy kept it, framed it, hung it in his office. A reminder that respect isn't given, it's taken. February 14, 1933. 12 men walked into a basement, 1 walked out. And Harlem was never the same. If this story hit you, smash that subscribe button. We're telling the Bumpy Johnson story's history forgot, the moments that made him a legend, and the code that made him untouchable. Drop a like if you think Bumpy was the smartest man in Harlem. And in the comments, what would you have done if you were Dutch Schultz? More legendary stories coming next. Don't miss it.